call it a win-win, both from the individual going in, but also the employer.
Thank you, Kirsten, for taking the time to speak to me today. Should we start with some introductions?
Absolutely. I'm Kirsten Ward. I'm currently Marketing Director for a financial services company.
So I'm Wendy Gray. I head up Carter Murray, been in Carter Murray since 2019. Carter Murray part of the SR group. We look after marketing, digital comms and sales recruitment from kind of exec right up to CMO level and interim and permanent. So should we just talk, I think we've known each other for a couple of years now. Just talk a little bit about how we met.
Yeah, I remember the day vividly because my dog was barking when you called me. You reached out to me for a CMO role, and the journey you did take me on was a very positive journey, which we'll touch on a bit later. But the role was for CMO. I did decide to take another role, which is the role that I'm currently in.
They were quite different roles, weren't they? So the role that you had the offer for was much more B2C focused, and the role that you took was much more B2B.
Yeah, and as I said, you know, I've been very much on the consumer side of the business, and what I wanted to do was actually try something that was a little bit different and B2B, which also led to us having a further conversation around a potential fractional role.
Yes, which is what we're here to talk about, isn't it?
Within Carter Murray,
yes.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the fractional role and how that works.
So I'll probably start by saying I didn't know what a fractional role was.
And a lot of people don't. Yeah. So fairly new term.
Absolutely. So at the moment, I do a fractional role on top of my full-time role for the SR group. And that came about really about wanting to do something a little bit different. So obviously I've got my day-to-day job, but working within the SR group within a fractional role gives you a number of things, I think. Gives you absolute flexibility.
Yep.
It enables you to touch roles and sectors that you might not have tried before. I haven't tried recruitment before, and it's a really interesting sector to look at. And the other piece, I suppose, is more around as an individual, it exposes you to different people, different skill sets, and gives you the opportunity to really get your foot in the door.
Yes.
You know, when budgets are tight for businesses, actually, from me as a CMO, going into a new role, it's really important, I think, that businesses know that the CMO going in is actually worth the value.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, you know, a foot in the door whilst giving flexibility, whilst the business actually isn't taking any risk.
Yep.
It's actually a very strong way of testing your candidates before you take the full risk.
And also your situation is quite unique because most people do a fractional role where they might do a fixed amount of time across a month, or they might do a number of different fractional roles that will be maybe one day here, one day somewhere else. Yours is actually quite unusual because you're actually in a full-time role. So how did that go about? Did you then go to your employer and ask if you could do this? How did that work?
Yeah, I went to my employer, who are, you know, incredibly flexible. And I asked basically if, you know, I coach the marketing team here and more as a mentor, I would say. So it's not in the day-to-day nitty-gritty of where a CMO would take place.
Yes.
So, you know, they were flexible. We set the boundaries of hours.
Yep.
And I make sure that, you know, I still can do my full-time role whilst having this other role on the side from a fractional perspective that just enables you to have a fresh perspective and ideas.
Yes.
You know, having ideas from different sectors actually helps my full-time role as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And actually, you've been a massive help to the SR group, so we've won by having you as part of our marketing team. How many hours do you do typically? How does it work?
Currently, I mean, it's slightly flexible. I'd probably say about 4 to 6 hours a month.
Yes. Okay.
I don't do any more than that.
Yep.
Obviously, if it started to get into a bigger role,
Yes.
That's a different
Yes.
story.
Yeah.
But what I do is do a few days a quarter where I come in here, we set essentially the, what needs to change over the next quarter,
Yes.
set the strategy and moves forward. And then we have weekly check-ins.
Okay,
or
brilliant.
monthly check-ins, sorry.
Yes, and you work that out around your
Absolutely,
workload.
yeah. So it really does work. It's sort of, I call it a win-win, both from the individual going
Yes.
in, but also the employer as well.
And I remember having a conversation with you where we talked about being in that B2B environment, which is quite different to B2C.
Yeah.
And you said, I like the creative piece, and that's the bit that I love my role, but I would love to be a bit more creative. And that's when I said to you, how about you come and work with us? And that's how obviously this came about. So for other candidates out in the market, obviously at the moment, there's quite a lot of senior people, marketing directors, CMOs looking for opportunities. How would you go about, obviously yours came to you in some ways. How would you go about finding a fractional CMO role?
It's the same old story. I think you have to use your network.
Yes.
I would also say that, always leave your last employer on jolly good terms, because you don't know when you're going to need them again. But using your network is a very powerful thing, and some people are worried about reaching out to people. But what I would say is, don't be worried. Someone might actually have an opportunity that they're actually waiting for someone to come out, kind of thing. So don't be afraid. Just get out there and try it. Might feel uncomfortable to start off with, but I think it will reap the rewards.
And I think a lot of people find fractional work through a network or a previous contact, or it's almost like you're fixing a problem, aren't you? So if you look at it from a business point of view, a CMO is in some ways, on a fractional basis, a much more cost-effective approach. But also, they might not be ready. They might be in a scale-up situation when they're not ready for a CMO, but they want the mind of a CMO to take them from one level to the next, or growth situation. So, I think there's pluses for both candidates and clients from this fractional opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, budgets are tight, kind of thing, and I think, not everyone can afford a CMO.
Yes.
So having a fractional role is really important, because it gives you the strategic piece that you really, really need, that, most people can implement marketing programs, whatever it might be, but not everyone can write a strategy and see the bigger vision.
Yes.
And that's
the key.
where the fractional roles absolutely pay for themselves.
Yeah, and also, like you said, gives you opportunities to work across different sectors, and then that might lead to something else that leads to a more permanent opportunity, which is great.
Yeah.
So during your career, when you've had to look for opportunities, obviously we've worked together for the last few years, what do you typically say to candidates that are looking? What do you look for in a recruitment consultancy?
I suppose what I look for is a recruitment consultant that listens, that cares. When I have dealt with recruitment agencies, when I'm recruiting, I expect the recruiter to really understand me as a client. And I expect them to actually listen. And I know that sounds a bit silly, saying listen.
Yes.
But a lot of people here, they don't listen.
Yes.
And that, I think, for me, that's what I look for. And that certainly was, even on the candidate side, working with you as Carter Murray, that's what absolutely sold me on Carter Murray. And honestly, I cannot tell you how many recruitment consultants. I've probably dealt with about 40 recruitment consultants in my life. Yeah, a lot. And I've probably recruited about 1,000 people.
Yes.
And I'm not exaggerating this because we're on film, this Carter Murray, and specifically you, was the only time that I have had a recruitment consultant that listened to the candidate, listened to what the client wanted. I remember you phoning me after each interview that I went through, saying, what did he say? Analysing what he said. you know, coaching almost through the interview process as a candidate. And then I think from the other side of the client side, if I was recruiting in the future, what I've learnt from that experience is, first and foremost, the client has to get the brief right.
Yes.
You know, whether it's on a creative level or recruitment level, you've got to get the brief right. And I think helping and listening to the client is absolutely what sets Carter Murray apart. And I suppose your skill set about interpreting how you think the client thinks and helping
Yes.
the candidate get inside the client's head, that absolutely is what helps people get jobs.
And I guess, you know, we got to a point where you got an offer, we talked about this earlier,
Yeah.
but you didn't accept it. But I think that was almost a journey we had to go on together.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I enjoyed working with you as much as hopefully you enjoyed
Yeah,
working with
yeah.
us. But we built a real personal relationship, which has obviously carried us through. And now I do get to work with you.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I might not have placed you, but I got to work with you. So that's
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today. I have actually taken you away from the marketing team today whilst you're busy working with them. So I do really appreciate you coming to talk to me today.
Oh, that's a pleasure. And I suppose I'd just like to finish by saying, you know, if anyone is looking for fractional roles,
Yes.
you know, the word in itself probably needs more awareness, I would
Yes.
say. But in terms of fractional roles, they really are an opportunity to just see things through a different lens.
Yes.
So I'd really encourage people to get out there and, you know, you might find that your new love kind of thing in
Yeah.
terms of a career or a sector.
And it could be NED as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a paid opportunity.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
so all good.
Thank you. Thank you so
very
much.
much.